Stop for a moment. Take a deep breath. You did not click on this by accident. You were led here. There is something within you that already knows. Something is shifting. Something is aligning. Something beyond your current circumstances is moving into place. Have you felt it? That quiet sense that your life is about to change. That inner anticipation you cannot logically explain. That subtle calm replacing old anxiety. This is not imagination. This is awareness. There comes a point when the unseen begins to press against the visible. When what you have assumed internally starts demanding expression externally. And in that moment, you feel it before you see it. This is that moment. You have entered a new state. You may not have announced it. You may not have spoken it aloud. But within yourself, something has shifted. And once the shift happens within, the outer world has no power to resist it. You are not waiting for something huge to arrive. You are standing at the threshold of what you have already claimed. Listen carefully, because what you are about to understand will change the way you see your reality forever. There is a truth so liberating, so powerful, that once it is understood, struggle begins to dissolve. It is this: creation is already finished. Nothing is being created in the future. Nothing is being formed outside of you in some distant moment. Everything that could ever exist, every success, every opportunity, every relationship, every breakthrough already exists now. Not in the visible world yet, but in consciousness. The world you see is not the beginning of creation. It is the result of it. Most people live as though they must force life to produce something new. They believe they must compete, chase, struggle, and convince the outer world to cooperate. But the outer world is not the cause. It is the effect. The real cause is the state of being you occupy within yourself. Think of reality as an infinite field of completed possibilities. Every version of you already exists. The successful version, the wealthy version, the confident version, the loved and admired version, the peaceful and fulfilled version. These are not fantasies. They are states of consciousness. And states are real. You are not here to create your desire. You are here to select it. Selection happens through assumption. When you assume the feeling of already being the one who has what you desire, you move into that state. And the moment you move into that state, you begin expressing a different reality. The world must then reflect that internal shift, because it has no choice but to mirror the consciousness that observes it. This is why effort alone cannot save you. You can work tirelessly and still remain in the state of not having. You can chase opportunity and still feel lack. And as long as you remain in the state of lack, lack will continue to express itself. But when you understand that creation is finished, something changes. You stop trying to make it happen. Instead, you begin to ask, who would I be if it were already done? That question is everything. If it were already done, you would not be anxious. If it were already done, you would not be desperate. If it were already done, you would not be checking constantly for evidence. You would be calm, certain, steady, relaxed. That feeling, that inner shift, is the movement into the completed creation. The outer world operates on delay. It reflects what you have been conscious of being. So if you change your state today, the reflection may take time to appear. But it must appear. The law is consistent. The mirror cannot argue with the face before it. Imagine standing in front of a mirror and smiling. The reflection must smile back. It cannot resist. It cannot debate. In the same way, when you assume the identity of the fulfilled version of yourself, reality must rearrange itself to match that identity. This is not wishful thinking. It is alignment. Every possibility exists now. There is a version of reality where your goal is already achieved. There is a version where the opportunity has already opened. There is a version where the relationship is already harmonious. You are not waiting for it to be created. You are aligning with it. And alignment is internal. You align through feeling, through belief, through quiet conviction, through persistence in the assumption that it is already yours. not someday, not eventually. Now, in consciousness, the moment you accept that creation is finished, time loses its power over you. You no longer feel pressured. You no longer feel behind. You no longer feel as though something is missing. Instead, you feel selected. You feel chosen, not by something outside of you, but by your own awareness. You begin living from the end. Living from the end means you think from the result, not of it. You feel from the accomplishment, not toward it. You make decisions as the one who already has it secured. And as you do this consistently, your reactions change. Your posture changes. Your tone changes. Your expectations change. And expectations shape experience. Many people abandon their desire because they believe nothing is happening. But everything is happening, just not always visibly. The state you have entered is already complete. The unseen reality is already formed. What you call waiting is simply the interval between assumption and visible confirmation. Do not mistake the interval for absence. When you plant a seed in the ground, you do not dig it up the next day to check if it is growing. You trust the process. You know the seed contains the full blueprint of what it will become. In the same way, when you assume the feeling of fulfillment, you have planted a seed in consciousness, and that seed contains the entire structure of its manifestation. Creation is finished. Your role is not to force it into being. Your role is to accept it. Accept that it already exists. Accept that it is already done. Accept that the version of you who has it is real, and step into that version now, because the moment you do, reality begins to move, and it moves in your favor. There is a profound difference between wanting something and being the one who has it. Most people live in the tension of desire. They want success. They want wealth. They want love. They want recognition. But wanting is an admission of not having. And as long as you remain in the state of wanting, you continue to express the experience of wanting. Life does not respond to your wishes. It responds to your identity. You do not express what you hope for. You express what you are conscious of being. This is why two people can desire the same thing and receive completely different results. One remains in longing. The other quietly assumes ownership. One prays from lack. The other lives from fulfillment. The world mirrors the state you occupy. If you are conscious of being overlooked, life will present situations where you feel ignored. If you are conscious of being unlucky, events will seem to confirm that belief. If you are conscious of being behind in life, reality will produce experiences that echo delay, not because the world is against you, but because it is faithfully reflecting you. This is not punishment. It is precision. Consciousness is creative. Whatever you accept as true about yourself becomes the lens through which you experience the world. And that lens determines what you notice, how you react, what you expect, and ultimately what unfolds. Wanting is powerless because it keeps the desire outside of you. Being is powerful because it internalizes the desire as fact. Ask yourself, who are you being right now? Are you being the one who struggles to pay bills, or the one who always finds provision? Are you being the one who fears rejection, or the one who is naturally valued? Are you being the one who hopes for opportunity, or the one who expects doors to open? The difference is subtle, but its impact is enormous. When you say, I want success, you are identifying as someone who does not yet have it. But when you say, I am successful, and more importantly, feel the stability and confidence of that truth, you shift states. And once you shift states, the outer world begins reorganizing around that new identity. This is why effort without identity change feels exhausting. You can take endless action, but if internally you still feel inadequate, the results will reflect inadequacy. Action does not override identity. Identity directs action. When you change who you are being, your decisions change naturally. Your posture changes. Your tone changes. Your standards change. Your reactions change. And those subtle shifts influence how others respond to you. You begin to express confidence instead of doubt. expectancy instead of hesitation, assurance instead of fear, and the world responds accordingly. The key is understanding that identity is chosen. It is not fixed. It is not assigned permanently by your past. It is a state you occupy, and states can be entered and exited. If you have been identifying as someone who struggles, you can step into the state of someone who thrives. If you have been identifying as someone overlooked, you can assume the state of someone admired. The moment you accept a new self, concept, you begin expressing it. But this requires honesty. You cannot merely repeat affirmations while secretly clinging to an old identity. The shift must be felt. It must be accepted as natural. It must become your baseline. When you assume the identity of the fulfilled version of yourself, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing validation. You stop seeking permission. You stop measuring progress anxiously. Instead, you operate from certainty, and certainty is magnetic. People sense it. Opportunities respond to it. Circumstances align with it. This is because the world is not separate from your consciousness. It is shaped by it. What you consistently accept as who I am becomes your lived experience. Many people focus on changing circumstances while leaving identity untouched. But circumstances are shadows. Identity is substance. If you change the substance, the shadow must change. So instead of asking, how do I get what I want? Begin asking, who would I be if it were already mine? Would you feel calmer, more secure, more decisive, more generous, more relaxed? Step into that now. Not partially, not occasionally, fully. Because you are not here to beg life for outcomes. You are here to embody states. And once embodied, those states express themselves automatically. You express what you are. If you are conscious of being powerful, life will reveal your power. If you are conscious of being supported, life will confirm that support. If you are conscious of being favored, circumstances will seem to favor you, not by chance, by law. So choose carefully who you are being. Persist in that identity. Return to it whenever doubt appears. And remember, the moment you change within, the reflection has already begun. You do not get what you want. You experience who you are. Once you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, something begins to move. Not always visibly, not always dramatically, but inevitably. A sequence of events starts forming. Conversations, opportunities, delays, unexpected turns, all weaving together into what may seem ordinary at first. Yet beneath the surface, there is orchestration. This sequence is the bridge of incidents. You do not build this bridge consciously. You do not map it out. You do not control each plank or step. The moment you occupy the state of fulfillment, the path between where you appear to be and where you desire to stand begins assembling itself. Most people become discouraged because they expect instant transformation. They assume that if the desire were truly secured, it would appear immediately and flawlessly. But reality unfolds through a series of natural movements. The bridge does not always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like inconvenience. Sometimes it looks like redirection. Sometimes it even looks like temporary loss. Yet every step is leading you forward. When you change internally, you step into a different version of yourself. That version exists in a different arrangement of circumstances. So life must shift you from the old arrangement into the new one, and that shift requires movement. You may meet someone unexpectedly who introduces you to an opportunity. You may feel inspired to take an action you had previously ignored. You may lose interest in something that once felt essential. You may even experience what seems like a setback, only to later discover it positioned you perfectly. The key is this: once the state is assumed, the end is guaranteed. But the how is not your responsibility. The mind often demands to know how it will happen. It tries to calculate the fastest route. It tries to predict every outcome. Yet the bridge of incidents is far more intelligent than your limited reasoning. It connects dots you cannot see. It aligns people you have not met. It synchronizes timing beyond your awareness. Your only task is to remain faithful to the state you have chosen. If you interrupt the process with doubt, fear, or constant checking, you delay the unfolding, not because the bridge disappears, but because you momentarily step back into an old state. And the old state has its own corresponding sequence of events. Persistence is power. Imagine setting a destination into a navigation system. Once entered, the route calculates automatically. You do not need to redesign the roads. You simply follow the directions. If you take a wrong turn, it recalculates. In the same way, once you assume your fulfilled state, life begins directing you through events that lead you there. Sometimes the bridge feels subtle. You may not even realize you are crossing it. Days pass normally. Conversations seem casual. Choices feel small. But each moment is adjusting your position. Other times the bridge feels dramatic. A sudden opportunity, a rapid shift, an unexpected breakthrough. In those moments, you may look back and realize every prior event was necessary. Even challenges can be part of the bridge. What appears as an obstacle may be separating you from something that no longer aligns with your new state. What feels like delay may actually be preparation. What feels like uncertainty may be rearrangement. The bridge is not random. It is precise, but it requires trust. When doubt arises, remind yourself, if the state has been assumed, the outcome is inevitable. The sequence is unfolding even if you cannot trace it. The unseen movements are just as real as visible ones. You do not need to force opportunities. You do not need to manipulate outcomes. You do not need to chase confirmation. The bridge is designed to carry you. This understanding brings peace. Instead of analyzing every circumstance, you observe calmly. Instead of reacting emotionally, you remain steady. Instead of fearing detours, you recognize them as adjustments. There is immense freedom in surrendering the how. You are not responsible for orchestrating the universe. You are responsible for remaining aligned with your chosen identity. As long as you persist in the feeling that it is done, the path continues forming beneath your feet. And one day, what seemed distant becomes present. What seemed unlikely becomes obvious. What seemed impossible becomes natural. When it arrives, it will feel almost effortless. You may even say, "Of course this happened." Because by the time you reach the visible manifestation, you have already crossed the internal distance. The bridge of incidence was never about struggle. It was about transition. So if things are shifting around you right now, if certain doors are closing, if new ideas are surfacing, if unexpected events are unfolding, do not panic. You are not losing control. You are crossing. Stay faithful to the end. Stay steady in your assumption. Let events play out without resistance. The bridge is already built, and it is carrying you exactly where you decided to go. There will be moments when the outer world seems to contradict everything you have assumed. Moments when circumstances appear unchanged. Moments when old patterns resurface. Moments when doubt whispers, "Nothing is happening." This is where most people turn back. They assume that what they see in front of them is the final truth. They react emotionally. They become discouraged. They abandon the state they had chosen. And by reacting, they unknowingly return to the old identity that produced those very appearances. But appearances are not causes. They are echoes. What you see today is the result of past assumptions. It is the delayed reflection of former states of consciousness. If you judge your progress by what is currently visible, you will always be reacting to yesterday's thinking. The outer world is a mirror, but it is a mirror with delay. If you stand before a mirror and change your expression, the reflection does not change first. You do. The mirror follows. In the same way, when you shift internally, the world must eventually reflect that shift. But if you look at the reflection too soon and panic, you may revert your expression, and the mirror will faithfully continue reflecting the old one. This is why emotional discipline is essential. Temporary appearances are tests of persistence, not tests from an external force, but tests of your own conviction. They reveal whether you truly believe the state you have assumed, or whether you are still depending on visible proof. If you require evidence before you feel secure, you are still living from the outside in. But when you feel secure despite what you see, you are living from the inside out. The inside out way is the only way that transforms reality. Imagine planting a seed in the soil. For days, nothing appears above the surface. If you dig it up every morning to check its progress, you destroy the growth. The same principle applies here. Once you have planted the seed of assumption, leave it undisturbed. Do not uproot it with fear. Do not flood it with doubt. Do not suffocate it with constant questioning. Instead, remain steady, calm, certain. If an unwanted circumstance appears, remind yourself this is an echo of the old state. It has no creative power now, unless I give it power through reaction. Reaction is agreement. When you react with fear, frustration, or anger, you are affirming the appearance as real and permanent. When you observe calmly and remain faithful to your new assumption, you withdraw energy from the old pattern, and what has no energy fades. This does not mean you ignore life or deny what is happening. It means you refuse to emotionally surrender to it. You acknowledge the situation without accepting it as final. You see it as a passing shadow, not a permanent structure. Your true reality is determined by the state you occupy, not the scene before you. There may be days when nothing seems to move, days when the silence feels loud, days when the old story attempts to convince you that change is impossible. Those are the most powerful moments, because in those moments, you are being invited to choose again, to either return to the familiar or persist in the unseen. Persistence does not require force. It requires quiet loyalty to your assumption. If you have assumed success, continue feeling secure, even if results have not yet appeared. If you have assumed harmony, remain composed even if temporary tension arises. If you have assumed abundance, maintain confidence even if numbers fluctuate. The visible world is not the authority. Your consciousness is. Every great shift happens internally first. And the greater the shift, the more the old state may attempt to reassert itself before dissolving completely. Think of it as momentum slowing down. An old train does not stop instantly when brakes are applied. It gradually loses speed. So when old circumstances appear, do not interpret them as failure. Interpret them as momentum fading. Stay in your new state. Refuse to argue with shadows. Refuse to accept temporary scenes as permanent definitions, because what you consistently assume eventually hardens into fact. The one who remains calm while others panic has mastered this principle. The one who refuses to let appearances dictate identity has understood the law. The one who persists despite contradiction becomes unstoppable. Your power lies not in controlling events, but in controlling your reaction to them. Choose faith over fear. Choose certainty over doubt. Choose the unseen over the visible, and watch how quickly temporary appearances lose their authority. They were never permanent. They were only passing through. Many people search endlessly for signs. They look for repeating numbers. They wait for messages. They analyze circumstances for confirmation. They hope for something outside of them to declare, it is coming. But the greatest sign does not appear in the outer world. It rises quietly within. The only sign you truly need is your inner knowing. There comes a moment in conscious creation when the desire no longer feels distant. It no longer feels fragile. It no longer feels uncertain. Instead, it feels natural. Familiar, almost ordinary. And that subtle shift, that calm certainty, is the signal that the state has been accepted. At first, desire often feels intense, emotional, urgent. You think about it constantly. You check for evidence. You imagine it with excitement mixed with anxiety. That stage is common, but it is not completion. Completion feels different. Completion feels peaceful. When you have truly assumed the state of fulfillment, desperation dissolves. The need to talk about it fades. The urge to prove it softens. You are no longer trying to convince yourself or anyone else. You simply know. This knowing is not loud. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It is steady. And that steadiness is power. When you know something is done, you behave differently. You think differently. You react differently. You no longer seek validation. You no longer interpret every small event as a sign of progress or failure. You rest in the assumption. This is where many people become confused. They mistake emotional excitement for manifestation. They believe that intense feeling is proof. But excitement often carries tension, and tension implies uncertainty. True assumption carries calm. Think of a memory from your past, something that has already happened. You do not feel anxious about it. You do not question whether it occurred. You simply accept it as fact. That is the same quality of feeling that accompanies fulfilled desire when it is truly assumed. It feels like memory. It feels settled. It feels done. When you reach this inner state, something shifts profoundly. Time loses its grip. You are no longer counting days. You are no longer wondering when. The question of how becomes irrelevant. You move through life with quiet confidence because within yourself, the matter is resolved. This is the sign. Not a number on a clock, not a random coincidence, not someone else's reassurance, your own calm conviction. There is a difference between hoping something will happen and knowing it will. Hope still contains doubt. Knowing contains certainty, and certainty is creative. The outer world responds not to your words, but to your dominant state. If your dominant state is calm assurance, life mirrors assurance. If your dominant state is anxiety, life mirrors instability. So when the desire feels natural, when imagining it no longer creates strain, when you can think about it without urgency, that is evidence that you have moved into alignment, and alignment guarantees expression. You do not need constant reminders once something is internally secured. You do not repeatedly check whether the sun will rise tomorrow. You assume it. In the same way, once your desire feels certain, you stop monitoring it. This is not indifference. It is completion. The seed of assumption has rooted deeply. It no longer requires constant attention. It is growing beneath the surface. The inner knowing often arrives quietly. You may notice that you are less reactive, less fearful, less concerned. You may find yourself making decisions from confidence rather than caution. You may sense a subtle shift in how you carry yourself. These are indicators of a new state, and the outer world must follow. Trust this inner shift more than any external evidence. The visible world can fluctuate. Circumstances can appear unstable, but your inner knowing is the foundation. It is the anchor. If you remain loyal to that quiet certainty, you will not be shaken by temporary appearances. You will not be distracted by delay. You will not be discouraged by silence. Because within yourself, it is finished. The greatest creators are not those who constantly search for signs. They are those who recognize that the sign has already occurred within them. The acceptance, the peace, the conviction. So if you feel calmer about your desire, if you feel less desperate and more assured, if you feel as though something has quietly locked into place, do not dismiss it. That is the moment everything changed. The world may not yet show it, but consciousness has already accepted it. And what consciousness accepts must eventually become visible. You do not need another confirmation. You are the confirmation. Your inner knowing is the sign, and it is enough. Now you understand. The sign was never outside of you. It was never in numbers, circumstances, or other people. The sign has always been your inner conviction, that calm certainty, that steady knowing. Something huge is coming your way because you are no longer the same person who once doubted it. You have moved into a new state, and a new state produces a new world. So from this moment forward, walk differently, think differently, feel differently. Not because you are trying to make something happen, but because you already know it is done. Let the world rearrange itself. Let events unfold naturally. Let doors open without force. Remain faithful to the unseen reality. Persist in the feeling of fulfillment. and watch how quickly the visible conforms. What is meant for you is not ahead of you. It is already yours. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to awaken your awareness. Thank you for daring to assume something greater for your life. Thank you for persisting in belief, even when the world seems silent. If this message resonated with you, carry it with you today. Return to it whenever you need to remember who you truly are. And if you feel that inner certainty growing stronger, stay connected. Continue feeding your mind with truth. Continue strengthening your assumption. Your new reality is not coming. It is unfolding. And I will see you in the next message.